morning, good afternoon, good evening. However you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you listen, wherever you're listening. It is the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast, and we are officially back. We got the tripod back together. It's so good to see everyone again. It feels like I haven't seen Jamal in forever. We've been talking, but I haven't seen him forever. It's good to see you guys. I'll start it with you, Jamal. How are you doing? I know you missed us last week because you had a press conference or a conference call with your cricket team that you have in India. You run some cricket team in India or something like that.
That's become urban legend now, apparently. So, but it's great to see you, Fred. Absolutely, it's been a few weeks. I know there's been some health, minor kind of things with health, with the flu and all that going around. But it's great to have the band back together. So we missed you at Radio Row. It wasn't the same without you, but hopefully we have the whole family together next year.
I've already made the commitment that I'm going to New Orleans no matter what. So I'll be in New Orleans for Radio Row next year. I may not do the whole week, but I'll get at least 3 days in.
Love it. 3 days that's all you need. I'll be honest with you. We were there for 3 nights, 4 days. That felt like 5 years. So, yeah, it's 4 days in Vegas is 5 years. It's sort of like you got to translate it into dog years, You got to multiply it by 7.
It was a lot.
There we go. And we got the man, the myth, the legend, Rydai. How are you doing this lovely evening?
What's up, fellas? Good. I think I got what you got, Al, because now I'm all sick. I feel like I've been sick all year. I've been sick since Christmas, but hit me bad yesterday. Trying to get through it today, but happy to be on with you guys and talk all things SC, so it'll be fun.
Here's some doctor advice for you, Ryan. Sudafed PE and Vicks has this like nasal stuff that you could use. I'm like downgraded to that because I still have a little bit, but I don't want to keep spraying the high power stuff up my nose and taking the high power medicine. So it's Sudafed PE and like Vicks nasal solution or something like that.
Make a drug cocktail, basically, is what you're saying?
Yeah, you just take the Sudafed, spray the stuff up your nose. It'll drip a little bit. Keep a tissue close by, and then go from there, and it'll keep you clear the whole day.
Okay, good.
I love that. Rye's got great color, though. He doesn't look like it's great complexion. He doesn't look like a sick guy. He's he's making sick really work for him.
Well, thank you. I feel it. It must be just the lighting because I can barely keep my eyes open right now. If you can tell, but
there you go.
Appreciate that.
A little ginseng boost. You remember that old ginseng? Take some ginseng.
Yeah, I got lemon ginger right now in the tea. So hopefully, I already had a Theraflu. I already had all the
lemon. Did you drop some Bullet in there?
Like a hot toddy?
Yeah,
I didn't tonight. Usually I do, but yeah, it didn't tonight. Tonight go strictly organic, I guess, which I think Bullet's kind of organic, but that's a different conversation.
Here we go. Let's roll into it. So. Me and Ryan had a great show on Thursday, Jamal, while you were having your annual meeting with your cricket team, and we.
So this is going to become a thing now. The
cricket
team is going to be there with the degrees and all of that. Yeah. This is a characteristic now. This is official.
Jamal, you have 14 PhDs and you're owner of a cricket team. So
I walked into that one. But
the more we build on your character, the more the better it becomes. People are going to start Googling what cricket team does he own?
Oh man,
we'll never say the name. But we kind of came to a decision saying we wanted to evaluate Lincoln Riley's offseason. At the end of the UCLA game, we both ripped into him pretty hard, and Lincoln Riley had some comments at the end of the UCLA game that you were not happy with, and you were like, it doesn't really make sense, and it really didn't make sense. Ryan, let's cue that up. Let's listen to those comments at the end of the UCLA game, and then we'll dig into that a little bit, and then we'll evaluate his offseason.
Below what we expect here, it's below the standard, and it's I gotta do a much better job, clearly, and I own all that, and I'm gonna fight my ass off in every single way to make sure this thing gets to where it's supposed to be. We keep having guys in our program like these two guys sitting next to me. Then we'll have one great shot as time goes on.
That's good, Ryan.
Cool. Look at that. We did that well. Good teamwork.
So Lincoln Riley is going to work his ass off, fight his ass off, and put this team to where it's supposed to be. I remember it. I would just rip into him. It shouldn't have been that way. You should already know why does it trigger this for it to happen? And all these deals. How do you have this team to where it's supposed to be, right? Jamal has some comments. Jamal, you want to go on your comments that you had after the UCLA game? Do you kind of remember it or whatever?
Sure, absolutely. No, I mean, I think the question that I had at that moment was, what took so long? I mean, why is this? Why did it need to be such a disappointing year, and the outcome of that year for Lincoln Riley to realize that why isn't this thinking this level of urgency from day one? You're getting $10 million a year. You're $100 million overall. I mean, with that comes a ton of responsibility. And I think that he had a lackadaisical attitude the first 2 years where he thought this was going to be a lot easier than it ended up being. And I think we underestimated how much Bob Stoops had sort of set him up for success at OU, where he could just kind of come in and just coach offense. You know, that was sort of the criticism across town with Chip Kelly was, look, he's got to do all these other things that he doesn't want to do. Now he's going to go to Ohio State and he can just kind of coach offense. And I think Lincoln Riley had the luxury of just being able to kind of coach offense at OU and have an enormity of success. Now when it came down to building a program from scratch in a more significant way, he thought the same recipe was going to work, and it didn't. And now, you know, that level of urgency finally emerged in the press conference. Unfortunately, it emerged at the end of year 2.
Yeah, and Ryan, do you remember your comments from that?
Not really, to be honest.
Okay.
I think we were all on the same page, but
yeah.
I don't remember exactly what was said. Just a lot of disappointment, obviously, especially in the way the season ending like that.
Yeah. So, and then now we wrap it all up, right? We get these comments and we wrap it all up. And I remember he really has to prove it. And Jamal had the quote of the season. The window is closing. And this was after he filed Alex Grinch. The window is closing. This offseason, Alex Grinch has one of the top, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the top transfer portal recruiting classes, correct?
You mean Lincoln Riley, not Alex Grinch?
I'm sorry, Lincoln Riley, yes. Jesus, forgive me, people.
Please forgive me.
Lincoln Riley, I mean, Alex Grinch was part of the transfer portal in a sense. But...
it's like 10th. Top 10.
The top 10. Okay, so that's a good number. Top 10 transfer portal and recruiting class. He also had a top 20 overall recruiting class. So when you put that together, we'll do a little math here. That's 30 into 2. It's pretty much 15. We'll say he has a top 15 class, transfer portal and high school recruiting. You agree with that, Jamal? Numbers wise, did I do that the right way?
Yeah, absolutely.
So on average, it's 15. If you guys don't understand what I did, I took the average. I took both numbers, added them up, and then you divided by the number of numbers. Yeah. So we'll give him.
Coach Rowe also teaches an SAT prep class for those of you. That's a separate YouTube link, but stay tuned to that one.
So he got on the road as soon as it happened. He started recruiting. The biggest story was, who was he going to hire for defensive coordinator, right? And so for me, was the defensive coordinator hire, and he hires DeAnton Lynn. But that wasn't the impressive thing. The impressive thing was the fact that as soon as DeAnton Lynn was hired, he's on a plane and he was in, I might be wrong, but I'm just trying to recap and guess, the fact that he was in Georgia. Already in somebody's living room recruiting, hitting the recruiting trail hard, trying to recruit somebody. So from what I see so far, Lincoln Riley is living up to his words. I'm going to kick it over to the Madman because we haven't heard from you in a while. And, you know, I love our conversations. Madman, how do you feel about Lincoln Riley's off-season effort compared to what he said at the end of the UCLA game to what he's doing now? Because I have a really good – I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to really agree with me on this one. But how do you feel about his off-season efforts from the end of UCLA game to now?
Oh, I think his effort has been nothing but an A. He's done everything that he said he was going to do, and he's addressed the things that he needed to do. And I think it started with the tough conversation with Alex Grinch. I know we had talked that it was certainly time. There was question of whether he had the stomach for it, whether he had the heart for it, given prior relationships, and he did, in terms of being able to sever those ties in the name of success for the program. And then I think if you look at things in totality, the level of effort he's put in, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, has been very apparent. You talked about the hiring of DeAnton Lynn, one of the hottest young names in all of football, whether college or professional. He gets the added bonus that he gets to pluck DeAnton Lynn from the rival across town. He then follows that up with Entz at linebacker coach, who was a head coach at the FCS level. I mean, really the head coach of the Alabama, the FCS, when it comes to North Dakota State and the success that they had there. And then he continues to sort of follow it up with Coach Henderson from a defensive line standpoint, probably one of the most, I would call, energetic minds in college football and professional football when it comes to the trenches. So I think those three hires, home run, home run, home run, and really addressing the defensive side. Then you sort of couple that with where he focused his recruiting efforts. I know we've talked a lot about the pipeline in terms of 10 offensive linemen recruited over the last 2 years. You talk about the players that he went after in terms of a focus on the trenches. So it's been very evident that this is all about defense and winning the trenches and really starting to put his money where his mouth is. So I think in terms of effort, you can't question it whatsoever. Since that game against UCLA, obviously the great Holiday Bowl performance, a tremendous opportunity for assessment, the Miller Moss coming out party, and then building on that, whether it comes to recruiting, whether it comes to hiring, whether it comes to sort of saying all the right things. Lincoln Riley's done a phenomenal job the last 3 months. It's been a 90-day A for Lincoln Riley since that time.
Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely echo it. I think just to add to it, I guess not too much, but emphasize after that UCLA game, like, we will play defense here. Those are the quotes, like, we will be great at defense. And as Jamal said, and just to hammer down on it, like, that has been the approach. Like, they built a foundation, even though last year wasn't great, but the skill players, there's some great skill players from 23 and 22. When you look at receiver and running back, and you look at Deuce at tight end, the 10 offensive linemen, but then you now look moving forward, it was all focused on adding to those trenches and building the defense. You look at the top recruit of this class as an interior offensive lineman from Florida. You look at the edge, Cameron Fountain on the defensive side is the second one. You look at the Bosco Marcellus kid who's a cornerback. And then you look at the transfers. I mean, you get the two kids from UCLA who are both great secondaries, and Kamari Ramsey and John Humphrey. You get the Arnold as a safety from Oregon State, and his brother Arnold, the linebacker. So it was all focused on creating a great defense. And now we'll see how with the coaching staff all couples together, but definitely emphasizing we will have great defense based on building something, but then we have a foundation, at least offensively. Let's continue to build on that. So I think he's done a really good job in putting his money where his mouth is. And then the last thing I'll say, I think, and this is what we need to see play out, it's hard to say in 90 days, but they're going after definitely a type of player and kid. And we kind of talked about this a few episodes ago, that want to be Trojans. And, everyone says that when they're first recruited and joined. So we'll see how much that sticks. I'm sure Malachi Nelson said that when he was first recruited, and he's now gone and going to Boise State. So we'll see if that sticks, but at least on the surface, we can put out there that it seems like that seems to be the type of player that they really want. A lot of people will still, and rightfully so, say, hey, this shouldn't be a top 20 class. This should be a top 5 class. But I think of those 20, that 20 ranking, those kids are the type of players that they want per se, not just a 5-star for being a 5-star. So we'll see how it works out. But in these 90 days, I think, it's a great effort, and it's what we needed to see in order to turn this program in the right direction.
Yeah, and so the good thing about it is, and let's just clear it up. We're saying from after that press conference to now, he's been doing great. He gets an A. We're not saying what is on the field, because we have yet to see what's on the field. We're just saying, is he backing up his words? And so there was another thing that came out last week, and this is the perfect time, because I'm happy you're back, Jamal. I hope you're refreshed, because I really want to hear your comments about this, because it could lead into this. He said that the quarterback spot is not solidified and that they're going to compete for it, and great quarterbacks come from competition. And if you remember, I said, hey, if it was me and we were in our staff meeting, Miller Moss is our guy. But to the public, we don't know yet. We're going to have him battle it out. You know what I mean? Because we don't want to just hand over the keys. Real quick, let me get your thoughts on that, on how you feel about that comment and his approach on taking that.
Yeah, Fred, I think you have to compete for the job. And as great a job as Miller Moss did in the Holiday Bowl, and as perfect as he really was, I mean, there was one interception outside of that. I mean, he was flawless in that performance. It was still only one game. And it was still only one game against a team that I'm not sure where their motivation level was in Louisville going into that game. So take nothing away from Miller Moss, but you have to sort of take the sample size for what it is of only 4 quarters. And we've been down this road before with USC the last 5, 6, 7 years. Let's not forget what JT Daniels' debut was at the Collie. I was there. Everyone said this is the next one, Mater Dei. I mean, he hit a touchdown to Amon-Ra. They were high school teammates at Mater Dei. Everyone was sort of envisioning this to be the next great duo of USC football, and we saw how it kind of played out with JT Daniels. We saw when Daniels got hurt, the Keaton Slovis debut. That, again, also was in the Coliseum against Stanford. Slovis lit it up. SC had 40-plus points that night. Thought this was the future yet again. He's here. He's arrived, the savior of the program. Didn't quite work out with Keaton Slovis. Then you talk about Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart had an incredible debut at Washington State. Everyone said, okay, this is the guy that's going to save Helton's job, turn everything around, and he's going to be the new savior. Didn't quite work out. So take nothing away from Miller Moss, but at the end of the day, it's still only one game, and one game is not a measure of sustained success. I think you have to bring him in. He's the unquestioned leader of the team for now, but these are still 18 to 22-year-old kids, and things change very quickly in that time frame. 6 weeks to an 18-year-old, very different than 6 weeks to guys our age, right? And so things change very quickly in that age group, in that sort of routine of the team. So it's definitely Miller Moss's team for now. But when you look at a Maeva, at least tools-wise, fits the mold a little bit more of the type of quarterback Lincoln Riley has had over the past few years, the big arm and the mobility. When you think about Baker, when you think about Jalen Hurts, when you think about Kyler, when you think about Caleb, you think more Jordan Maeva than you think Miller Moss. So I think you want to have them completely compete all throughout the spring, see what happens. I think if this were a race, if this was a 100-meter race, I think that, Miller Moss probably has a 15-meter head start right now, but that's not an insurmountable amount for a Jordan Maeva to overcome. So I completely agree with the decision. I think he's going to have to allow these two kids to compete and really be able to galvanize this team. Because the one thing I'll say is this is going to be a new year. Caleb covered up so much in a lot of ways. For as much as he was a problem at times, Fred, we've talked about the leadership piece. We've talked about the body language piece. We've talked about as much as he has sort of disassociated from the team over the course of last year and sort of shaken the chemistry of the team, we'll call it, on the field. He still covered up so many warts of this team, even offensively. You don't have that security blanket now going into this year, so you really have to be mindful about this decision. And the other thing I'll say is the one area where this is still a work in progress is the talent pipeline. To your point, Fred, 10 and 20, and the average makes 15, but 15 isn't really a number that SC should be at. I mean, even a guy like Clay Helton was able to get top 10 recruiting classes. SC kind of recruits itself when it comes to football. This is only the 4th time, I believe, in the last 25 years that SC's had a recruiting class outside of the top 10. So still a lot of work to be done for Lincoln Riley to get big-time talent. Obviously, development's another piece. So you don't have quite the cupboard that you are used to. So that's why the quarterback position is even more important now going into the 24 season. And that's why you have to be sure that you have the best guy for the job.
Yeah, and so, Ryan, this is something we forgot to talk about, too, and I thought about it 2 days later. How do you get an evaluation on him? And you're probably going to run 2 different offenses, which Lincoln Riley, in my opinion, is really good at. He knows how to run offenses to fit the quarterback. So the offense for Maeva is going to be different from the offense for Miller. And we've seen it. It was a different offense in the Holiday Bowl than when we've seen Caleb run. It may be the same play calls, but it's ran a little different. It's called different. How do you think, and Ryan, you spend a lot of time there and you kind of get the gist of it. How do you think they'll be able to evaluate these two guys and they're running a kind of a different offense? Do you think it's based off of footwork? Do you think it's based off of, are they reading their keys and those type of things?
Well, I mean, we touched on it super briefly, like if they randomly would run a 2-quarterback system in any capacity. But I think the easiest way to evaluate is just what offense works better, regardless of if you're valuing the quarterbacks. If Maeva is moving the ball much better in the spring game, if it looks different, so be it. If he's connecting with the receivers and they're moving it, that's where you're going with. So, if they run it a little differently, I think that's better. You don't want to force a talent of each of these guys to do something they're not great at. And I think Lincoln Riley will do a good job of that. But I think you more look at maybe not who's running their particular system better, just who's running the offense better. And seems like a cop-out answer, but you don't want to have a cookie-cutter offense. You just plug a guy in and see who does it better. You kind of want to tailor it to each and then just see what offense actually performs better within the whole system of the offensive line moving, of these running backs, 2 freshman running backs that are not going to be sophomores. Plus you get the transfer from Mississippi State. So you're having 2 new starters or different starters at running back. You're having, your receiving core is all going to be brand new in terms of starting. Obviously they've all been there last year, but who's going to be the top guy? Is it Hudson? Is it Branch? Is it, one of these other guys? So just what system, regardless of quarterback, works best for the whole offense. And then how does that offense move? And they got, all of spring ball and all of fall camp to figure that out. I don't know. Does that answer what you were asking?
Yeah, actually it does. It's actually, believe it or not, it's not even cookie cutter. That's a really good answer, right? Because they're going to run 2 different offenses. And how do I say this? So it's the same offense, but it's ran differently. I guess that's the simplest way to say it. Like, instead of saying they're going to run 2 different offenses, they're not going to run 2 completely different offenses. They're running the same offense, but it's like Chevy and GMC, right? It's going down the same factory line, but once it becomes a Yukon, it goes that way. Once it becomes a Tahoe, it goes that way, right? It's the same thing. It's just different. So you're right. If Maeva is moving the ball and it looks really good, that's our guy. If Miller's moving the ball and it looks really good, that's our guy. So, that's the perfect answer. That's a good job. Kudos to Ryan. You're the guy. Ryan is the man of the day. There you go.
That's that whenever I can get it.
There you go. So let's just circle back to it though. So recruiting all season. There's another thing I noticed too. Recruiting all season. His defensive linemen are not the same defensive linemen. If you start in the other set, he's starting to get, and Jamal, we used to comment on this a lot in the comments, like they'll get a guy, they'll get a guy 6 feet, 290. We're like, But then after the Anton Land and all that comment came in, you're starting to see 6'3", 300, 6'6", 290. You're starting to see him recruit legit defensive linemen. I'll throw to you, Jamal, and then we'll go to Ryan. How do you guys feel about the recruiting shift? I know it's going in a positive direction. I know it's the obvious, but what are your true heart desired feelings? Like the changes that you wanted to see. I should put it like this. The changes you wanted to see in recruiting, have you seen those changes in recruiting this offseason by Lincoln Riley? I'll start with Jamal, and then as soon as Jamal's done, I'll roll it over to you, Ryan.
Yeah, Fred, I think there's a common thread actually between the question you just asked and the conversation around the quarterback, because I think there's an emphasis right now on let's get the things we can't teach and then teach the things we can. Because when you talk about defensive line, you can't teach height. I mean, you can go and develop a kid 6'6", 290, get him a little thicker, work on footwork, work on explosion in terms of kind of lower body strength and so forth. You can work on a kid 6'3", 6'4", that's 300, 310, but you can't really do a lot with 6 feet, 280, right? I mean, that's just such a big jump in terms of development because you just don't have the base sort of height and weight to be able to work with. And so there's an acknowledgement here that development only goes so far, right? You have to be able to have the point of departure, the raw prospect, the raw talent to be a certain stage and then go and apply the development to then turn that player into an elite player. There's only so far you can go with development, right? Where people kind of talk about investing, for instance. How can I be a great investor? Well, the greatest barometer of your investment, being a great investor, is your income level. Your income level has to be sort of a certain amount where then the domino effect of your investments really starts playing out. And I think earlier, USC was playing with a lower income level. Now they're playing with a higher income level in terms of the type of recruit that they're going after, either from a height standpoint or from a weight standpoint or from both. So now you've got a much higher base that you're working with, and now the development becomes even stronger. And I think that's also what's very intriguing, going back to the earlier conversation about the quarterback, between Moss and Maeva, because at the end of the day, Moss has the lead, Fred, as we talked about, and he's got the leadership of that locker room. But the things that Maeva can do, Moss can't do. But the things that Moss can do, Maeva can learn. And so there's what Maeva can do, Moss can't learn, because some of those things are just physical in terms of arm strength, in terms of mobility, in terms of explosiveness. But the things that Moss can do, Maeva can learn. And so eventually you're probably thinking, just with that pattern emerging, Maeva's eventually going to be the starter here. The question is, can Moss fend him off for 24 to be the starter? But eventually that curve kind of takes over. And I think we're seeing a similar curve with the defensive line prospects, where you're starting with just a stronger base and then developing accordingly, so that trajectory is just higher.
So two things too, Jamal, is what I want to point out. The stars are all so different. And when I say the stars are recruiting stars, you remember before the transfer were 3-star guys. Now all of a sudden it's starting to be 4-star, 5-star guys who are starting to be interested in USC.
The base is elevated.
Yeah, yeah. And so then also, and that goes back to the comment that we said in the beginning of the show. Lincoln said the standard's not good enough. We need to set the standard and rise the standard. And it looks like he's slowly rising the standard. I will also say this. The thing that Miller Moss is really good at, and it's kind of old school football and a lot of quarterbacks don't do it anymore, his pocket presence is really, really good. I don't care if he only played one game or if he played 13 games. That's something that's talent. I think that's where he edges him. He sits in the pocket, waits for it. He'll could take a lick and throw the ball. That's a talent. That's really, really good. So, not trying to, but like that's one thing I do like. And I think that's why a lot of pros are going to like him. Just looking into the future, like, oh, his pocket presence is really, really good. So I think that's why a lot of pros will give him an opportunity. I'm not saying on Thursday, but maybe Friday. He might be a top name quarterback if he has a good year, depending on what he does on the field. His upside is through the roof. Ryan, what do you think about how we are with recruiting and the changes that were made, and what changes did you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo on, and I'm trying to remember the timeline. It's all bleeding together now. So I know D'Anton Lynn was hired December 1st, but I believe right around the time he was hired or so, they flipped like 4 defensive players for this class. There may have been 1 or 2 right before, so I could be wrong. But essentially, they flipped Carlin Jones, Jahid Abasari, the linebacker, Jaden Walker, and then Lorenzo Cohen, the big edge out of Georgia. So just in that regard, they were able to flip some guys on the defensive side just from the hire being made. And then we see, Coach Henderson's not hired till what's the date? After the Rams lost the Lions was
like the first week.
February?
The first week? Nah. Was it February?
January.
Yeah.
January, like 14th-ish, probably.
Yeah.
So mid-January. And just the amount of, kids, 4-star, 5-star that are narrowing down their schools, and they have SC in the top 5 that are doing. I mean, they've had, massive visits. We've talked about them on the show, the visits that they've had on campus, the junior days they've had. I'm not saying that hasn't happened in the past, but those are all definitely things. I don't know why this does this. This thumbs up that you're seeing come up on my screen.
It's a new thing. It happens a lot now.
I think because you thumbs up.
Yeah, I guess I need to figure out how to turn that off because it didn't really on Radio Row a ton. But yeah, I'm not saying that didn't happen, but those are the types of things you want to see this recruiting class, and we're seeing these coaches recruit, and Lincoln Riley instilling that, but then this defensive staff being so on it. And I think Coach Henderson, to my knowledge, I'm trying to think back, didn't coach much I think he coached a little bit at Memphis before jumping to the Chargers, and then with the Rams before, and obviously he played at Cincinnati in the pros. So not like a huge guy that's been recruiting all this time, and he's like jumped in head first and is like diving to recruiting all over the country. Like, and who doesn't want to play for Coach Henderson, who's, we've talked about it many times, all his accolades. So they're doing the right things, and I think they're getting, when you see, I mentioned the 4 kids that flipped, and then you're seeing these visits that are coming in that are these bodies and these types of players they want, plus they have the star pedigree that people need to see that are playing for SC. So yeah, doing the right things in that regard. Now we just need to see them, the 25 class start to fill out, obviously, because right now it's just Juju Lewis.
Yeah. No, we just got another quarterback commitment. What year did he commit for? There's another quarterback that committed.
Which one?
I don't remember his name. When I find it, I'll send it to you. I'm not going to look for it right now, but there's another quarterback that committed, and it wasn't Juju Lewis, and I think it's the same year. Could be wrong, but I thought I saw that. If I find it, I'll look for it. If I find it, I'll send it to you, and you'll correct me because you
commit. But I think they definitely probably like narrow down to top 3 or something.
Oh, okay.
Or an official visit. But anyway, we'll figure it out.
Don't quote me on it. Yeah, I'll pull it up later, and don't quote me on it. But I will say this, and a lot of people get the misconception, and I think this is why they're so good at it. That they're like, oh, he's coming from the NFL, and he doesn't have to recruit. Recruiting's harder in the NFL than it is in college, because, and I learned this from when I was coaching with Cameron. He was like, it's harder to recruit in the NFL than it is college. College kids have their mind kind of made up of where they want to go. And if you're already in their top school, you just have to kind of convince them. They just need that little push. You know what I mean? They need that little push like, all right, coach, I'm coming here. This is my dream school. I'm coming here. In the NFL, you got 4 teams offering you the same amount of money, and you might have that one team that offers you a little bit of money. How do I convince this superstar to come play for me? You know what I mean? How do you convince Randy Moss that I am the guy? The best receiver in the league. You know, the examples that he used, he was like Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, just Darrelle Revis. How do you convince those guys that this is worth coming to play for? And people kind of forget that recruiting part, which is big. Like these are the biggest names in the game. And you have to kind of recruit those people to come and play for you. So I think that's why when pro guys come back, they're like, damn, those dudes just jump right in and start recruiting. Hey, man, I had to recruit Aaron Donald. I had to make sure Aaron Donald stayed with the Rams. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is easy. Like, these kids already know. So he does have a little bit of experience. But moving forward, before we move forward, full swing of basketball season. And if you want to get a little bit of bucks on basketball, if you want to bet on LeBron, Steph, and KD on the same night, go to Underdog Fantasy. Put in promo code USCLAFB. Will match up to $100. You can select LeBron's going to get 8 rebounds, KD's going to hit 15 points, and Steph Curry is going to go 100% of free throws. They even have fantasy games on there. Underdog Fantasy in the App Store and Google Play. Jamal, I did an interview. You'll love this. I did an interview with the guy doing a PhD, and he's talking about is the former people in athletics who worked in athletics. And he was talking about how people think effort equals more time, right? So when they need a change, we need to add more time to it, right? And this is how this topic came up. I told Ryan about this already on the last show. And I was like, a good person you should try to reach out to if you haven't published your article or look into is Lincoln Riley. He needed to work harder, but he didn't add more time to it. He added more effort. Am I making sense? I said it wrong. People think working harder is more time. Let's backtrack. Working harder means add more time, throw more time to it. If I work an extra 40 minutes, right. You know what I mean? And he's trying to show that adding more time doesn't mean you're going to get better results.
Correct.
And I said, if you look at Lincoln Riley, he didn't add more time to it. He changed his effort towards it. Right? And his effort has completely changed. So that's my question. Do you agree that, and I know you're going to probably say yes, but let's get into detail. Do you agree his efforts changed? Right? But this is where it's going to get dark, and this is where we're going to get deep. Do you think he needed this push for his effort to change? Or if SC goes to the semi and get knocked out, do we have the same Lincoln Riley we have from the past 2 years? Let's start with Ryan. I'll let Jamal think about it, and then we'll go to Jamal.
Do we think we've seen his effort change? Yeah, like based on everything we've talked about so far. I think that's undeniable, just in how he's approaching things and whatnot, and putting an emphasis on certain things. I mean, it's all speculation. Who knows? But I don't think we'll see a revert back to that. I think he's at the point now, based on comments he said, where he wants to push it as far as he goes and then either retire or go to the NFL. So whether that's next year, 2 years, 3 years, I think it's like push, whether it's a natty or whether it's a finals appearance, and then maybe go to the NFL or retire after that. So I don't think he'll revert back to less effort, because then he knows that it won't ever get to that point anyway. So
no, what I'm saying is, let's just say this past year he goes to the college football semi, right?
Yeah.
High school champion, college
like
football.
last year?
Yeah, this past year. Will we see the same effort out of Lincoln Riley if he had a successful season last year? That was my question.
Oh, well, I mean, they wouldn't have fired Grinch or the staff, so it probably would have been the exact same.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Back. So everything they would have been doing would have been the exact same. So
let's not think about that. Let's
probably
not. Think about that. Jamal, what do you think? Jamal, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, Fred, what you're getting to is it's not always working harder is going to get the results. What gets the results is working smarter, but working smarter in terms of concentrated time. Like, it's better to work for 2 hours, but be super focused in those 2 hours than work for 10 hours with varying levels of effort. And I think we're seeing a more focused level of effort from Lincoln Riley because he's hired the right people. Because that's what you do. You hire the right people, as he's done with this defensive staff, and then you trust them to be able to execute your vision given their level of talent, their level of expertise, their critical thinking, their judgment. So I think he's done that very well, where his effort is now more focused in terms of the things that he needs to do. The question about whether had it been different if it was, let's call it a 9-3 year or a 10-3 year or something like that, the evidence suggests no. I mean, he would just be the same. He'd be the same guy because he was the same guy for 5 years at Oklahoma. He was the same guy for the first year at SC. If there's no push for the change, you don't feel that level of urgency to change, why would you? So again, it's a hard question to answer because it is, as Ryan said, speculative. But I think in many ways we could look back and say, hey, 23 was perhaps the best thing that happened to Lincoln Riley because it lit the fire that was necessary to move forward. And I think moving forward, I've always felt that Lincoln Riley was 4 or 5 years. I never saw it sort of beyond that. And so I think there's going to be this big push here these next 2 years to have him re-elevated in the national conversation. Let's be honest here. We're in February of 2024. The perception of Lincoln Riley is very, very different than February of 2022. February of 2022, we were talking about him. It was like Saban, Kirby, Lincoln, right? I mean, like, let's just go back 2 years. Now you see all these lists, rightfully or wrongfully, but he's not even in the top 10. You see all of this chatter in terms of NFL jobs. What was interesting is it was silent with Lincoln Riley. Not one team, there was chatter about Lincoln Riley, right? And that's a great thing in terms of stability for USC, but it's also kind of a bad thing for Lincoln Riley that he's not, because this season was so poor, he's not even really considered a desirable candidate at the next level. So I think he's felt all of that, and I think he needs to sort of move forward to sort of change that narrative. The one thing I will say, and this is sort of the one blemish on Miss America, where Miss America is Lincoln Riley's offseason so far, I still don't like his tone in some of these press conferences.
That was going to be my next question, Jamal. Swear to God.
It's still a little bit, he still is kind of talking like this hired gun consultant, where it's like, Lincoln, how come, you didn't want to choose to go to the NFL? Or how come you didn't want to do X, Y, or Z? Well, this university deserves better. And it's important to get this program back on top. And it's important for the fans and the alumni of this university to feel like they're winners again. there's a lot of that from sort of an outside perspective. I don't feel like the we. I don't feel the collective yet. He still feels a little bit hired gun-ish. And so hopefully that's part of his journey where it becomes a little bit more inclusive that he's in it with us. But I still feel like he's been hired to do a job. And once that job is done, he's out. It's not, I don't get that sense that he's sort of this long-term guy that sort of bleeds USC that's going to be sort of there for the long term. So that's my one slight critique of his last 30 days where I haven't seen that shift yet. Other than that, he's done a phenomenal job.
So, as you were saying, that was legit going to be my next question. How do you feel he's been media-wise? I kind of disagree with you. I kind of feel like he's doing all the right things. You know what I mean? And I think we don't know if he's telling the truth or not, right? Because nothing's happened. So we can't cover what do you call them? The honesty gaps.
The honesty gaps.
The honesty gaps. We can't cover the honesty gaps, but he came out and protected Caleb, which he was supposed to do. You know what I mean? Because even if you are a quarterback, like, dang, those recruits hear things like, dang, we know how he really was. Let's just say we know how he really was, but coach did that for him. That's pretty cool. Like, all right, he protects the locker room. Like, he's saying all the right things. Now, the tone, like you say, you don't like the tone. I never really paid attention to the tone. I guess that's why you're my guy, because you got my back and you cover all my gaps. No, I think media wise though he is doing the right things for the media. I am a little worried about him getting ahead of himself though, because I think he's excited about the product, but the product might still be a prototype, and he might put the prototype in the stores, if that makes sense. Like, let's put it through testing. Unfortunately, the first test is LSU in a neutral site, but don't get ahead of yourself with the prototype. At least let's see what it looks like in the spring game. I know it's not great, but we got at least get to see him running around a little bit. So that's what he kind of does that sometimes. He kind of gets ahead of himself, like, oh, yeah. We're so great and we're ready to do this and do that. Let's slow it down. Let's see where you really are metrically when you go to Vegas, so that's kind of where I am with that. You guys got anything on that? Yes, no, okay.
Yeah.
No, I think you're spot on, Fred. And it's like, I think to your point, he's had a phenomenal offseason. Unfortunately, they don't give trophies for phenomenal off seasons. If that were the case, the Los Angeles Chargers would have the most Super Bowls of anybody in the NFL. So, instead there's a term called chargering it. So that's why you don't give trophies in the offseason. So I think let's see how this thing plays out. And I think it's important for fans and the media as well. I think we play a part to not be just satisfied with these 3 months. Let's not forget, he's getting $100 million a year. This is a $10 million a year coach. He better be held to a very high standard. This is sort of comes with part of the territory to be satisfied with what he's doing and who he's hired and the recruits he's gotten. That's table stakes. USC is not paying Lincoln Riley to win 7, 8, 9 games. USC is paying Lincoln Riley to be in the Final Four, to win national championships and be in that contention year over year. So let's not forget what the expectation is. There's a lot of money going to this gentleman, and he needs to deliver, just like how any of us would need to deliver in any job we are in if we got paid a ton. So it's important to not sort of fall in love also with the last 90 days and understand this is not a $6 million a year coach. This is a $10 million a year coach at a blue blood program. And so with that standard needs to be very, very high, and the fire needs to be right there, right underneath. Don't remove the fire from the radius or the diameter of the tush. Okay, any more than it needs to be. That fire's got to be there because of how much he's getting paid and who he's coaching.
Do you think he has complacency issues? Now you opened up Pandora's box. Do you think those would be the last? And I have another question after this. I want to know what you want to think. I want to know what you would think after this. But do you think he has complacency issues? Because now let's just say hypothetically, right? He busts his ass for the next 2 years, right? He goes to the Final Four, gets bounced in the Final Four. It's all right. Let's say he wins the Big Ten, gets bounced in the Final Four. It's hypothetical. It's not for real. Next year, he goes to the national championship, falls short again, right? Do you think he stays on the gas? But in your theory, he's gone after that, right? According to your theory, that he'll be 5 years into his contract. He's gone to the NFL. He's going to retire. Let's just say he doesn't leave. He's still at SC. Do you think he stays on the gas and pushes for a national championship, or do you think he gets to a point where he's like, well, I'm competitive enough and I'm winning conference championships and my name is out there and I'm getting top recruiting classes. I don't need to push it hard. I'm right where I need to be. Do you think that will happen by him?
I don't think that's his decision. I think that decision that's going to be Jennifer Cohen's decision. That's going to be Rick Caruso's decision. That's going to be the boosters' decision, because ultimately you get what you measure and you are what you tolerate. And so if he has 2 successful seasons in that regard, of very successful, but not with the national championship, and the power brokers around the USC program are content with that, then why does he need to push even more? But if the folks around the program are not content with that, then I think the fire will continue. So I don't think it's his choice, actually. It's you are what you tolerate. And it'll be a question really around more of the USC program than around Lincoln Riley.
Ryan, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. I don't know. It depends on what we and everyone defines success as. I mean, took Jim Harbaugh 9 years, right? And he's the hottest coaching name in both leagues. I'm not saying Michigan is SC, but they're certainly a blue blood. So I'm not saying the goal is to take 9 years. But if you go to many playoffs and you build consistency and build a culture, and then 9 years, last year before your contract expires, you win the Natty and then go to the pros. I mean, that's kind of the perfect scenario for almost everyone right there. So,
you know what's interesting though, Rye, is that with Harbaugh's that one outlier, because you can sort of define it as 9 years or you can define it as 3 years. In any other situation, he would have been fired in the COVID year, but because he was an alum, they gave him one last chance. Yeah. And then it was his last 3 years that became Harbaugh, right? And so was it really 9 years, or was it this sort of 3 year iteration where he had to go through the same thing, right? He had to fire the whole coaches, the whole staff. He had to retool everything in a lot of ways that Lincoln Riley's doing right now. And so it's interesting because you're 100% right. It was 9 years in sort of the literal sense, but it actually felt like a very separate 3 year chapter, because if he was not a Michigan alum, I have a hard time believing he doesn't get fired in that COVID year. And they gave him that one extra step, that one extra level of empathy to kind of keep it rolling. And I'm not sure Lincoln Riley is going to get that because he's not a USC alum. And so it's just going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, the alumni thing saved him, I think, for sure. That certainly helped.
I see. It's interesting you say that, Jamal, because I don't think that way. If I go to the Final Four and I lose, and I go to the national championship and I lose, as soon as I'm in the locker room, I'm saying, what are we missing? We're too close. We need to go get it. You know what I mean? I don't need Rick Caruso and Jennifer Cohen I might not even talk to him for a month. I'm sorry. I need to fix this because we're right there at the door, and I need to find that one piece or those 3 pieces to finally get us over the top and get this thing rolling. So that's why I was like, do you think he has the complacency? Does he have? I guess it's more of like a killer instinct. Does he have a killer instinct, or is he the guy that's like, it just is what it is. I'm that guy. I'll always end up successful, and successful is enough.
So you could argue that's why he came to SC, because he could have just been complacent in Oklahoma. He went to 2 playoffs. Could have just been like, yeah, we're good here. I get my quarterback every year.
Yeah, but also there was some stuff in Oklahoma that he was unhappy about, like Bob Stoops still being there. He wasn't happy about the SEC thing, So I think when he popped up in SC search and SC gave him that phone call, I think he's like, this is my perfect out. Like Bob Stoops still has an office at Oklahoma, and he's still heavily involved in athletics. He wasn't too happy about that. So I don't know. I see now you got me questioning stuff, Jamal. This was supposed to be a positive show about Lincoln Riley, and then you got me.
I think I've been very positive. Honestly, Brett, I think those questions will sort of reveal themselves. Those answers will reveal themselves in time. I think moving forward, but it's all to say I think he's done a great job in the offseason up until this point.
Yes,
and
very good.
It remains to be seen where this goes.
Okay, my last question for Jamal. Me and Ryan talked about it. Give me 2 names to replace the running back coach.
That's a good question. I think this is an opportunity for Lincoln Riley to bring in somebody kind of young and hungry. I think, frankly, I'll be honest with you, I think he's the running backs coach, to be honest with you. It's not really a cop-out. I think that the role of the running back is very underrated in his system. And when you go back and you see his version of the air raid the last 4, 5, 6 years, that he actually loves the bell cow. Like this notion that it's sort of this running back by committee and you just sort of plug anyone in there and you kind of give them, just some general guidelines, I think is a false narrative. I think he's always been a big bell cow guy. Even if you look at USC the last couple of years, Travis Dye being such a vital part of the team in 22. I think Marshawn Lloyd was head and shoulders the best running back in 23. I think the big gripe was he didn't get the ball enough. And so I think, frankly, the answer may very well be that Lincoln Riley needs to kind of take that under his wing because it needs to be a little bit more integrated. I think that the one knock has been that while he's been here, the running back utilization has been kind of in question. Like Travis Dye maybe was a little overutilized in 2022 and Marshawn Lloyd was underutilized in 2023. And I think there's probably a world where it becomes a little bit more integrated. So I think this is sort of an easier hire in the sense where I think he can bring someone younger and hungrier on the offensive side, perhaps a USC alum here to kind of bring in the role of the running back coach, but also someone to kind of help with the culture and the spirit and the fundraising. And I think it can be kind of a dual-hatted role. But I actually think this needs to be more under Lincoln's purview as the offensive play caller. This idea to silo off the running backs coach in his system, I don't think is the right answer. So I probably a cop out there, Fred. I think it's kind of a low stakes hire, to be honest with you. But I think it's one where his mindset has to be, this has to be much more integrated in terms of my offensive scheme.
So I'll give you one of Ryan's name and one of my names.
Okay.
And I'll lead it with this. Traditionally, like on the pay scale, it's like running backs coach, tight ends, linebacker coach are all in that lower end pay scale, and like DBs, receivers, and quarterback coaches and coordinators are a little bit higher. Ryan said Mike Hart from Michigan. I'll give you both, and he said DeMarco Murray. Those are Ryan's. My 2 names.
I have another one. I'll tell you after.
Okay, my 2 names were Todd McNair. Right.
Oh, okay.
Right, to bridge that culture gap. He was there. Todd McNair would love to come back to California. I played under T-Mac. He'll love to come back to California. His kids are older now. It'll work out. Another one I came up with, why not move Taylor Mays over to running back coach? Especially after what you said, umbrella it, put him under the umbrella. Now you have a young coach, can learn the system. He gets better as a coach because he's learning the offense side of the ball. He might become this great offensive coordinator. There's thousands of coordinators and head coaches who are offensive guys who started on defense, vice versa, flipped over. If you want to flip him over right now, like right now is the time to flip him because he's so young in his career. Why not use Taylor Mays? He's already on your staff, and it's a good time to get him better and get him a wealth of knowledge of doing that. Especially, like I said earlier, when you said like he needs the supervisor to be under his umbrella, that's perfect. Those were our 4.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's sort of an interesting 4, a bit of a polarizing 4. I don't like 3 of them. I like one of them. The one I like is DeMarco Murray. And the reason I do is, he played in the air raid. He was at OU. He played for the Cowboys, and he understands that zone read scheme. And that's really where the air raid sort of is. I don't love Mike Hart because it's more of that under center power formation in between the tackles, kind of what Harbaugh's running, what Michigan's running. I think that's a different running style than kind of a zone read, stretch plays, get to the outside, set the edge type of running scheme. And so I think Murray would be really good to complement Lincoln Riley in that regard. And then kind of given, I think they overlapped for a year at OU, perhaps, when DeMarco Murray was there. And so I think that would be nice to be able to sort of do that, because Murray is running backs coach for OU. So I think that works out kind of nicely. And again, he's younger, hungrier, I think more to prove, a very charismatic guy. I think he can really help with the recruiting, the fundraising too, being a guy who played in the league, played at the highest level. Really like DeMarco Murray there. Don't love Hart. I think it's just a different style of running that sort of goes counter to the air raid. And I think Hart's just such a Michigan guy. I think it's going to be a little bit harder for him to sort of transition to USC. Taylor is, Taylor May's a USC legend, but I think when you start putting guys on other positions that they never played, I think it's fine in theory, but the moment something kind of goes wrong or there's some adversity or there's some problem you're trying to solve, I think it can really snowball and be really problematic. I think Taylor Mays needs to be someone that climbs through the defensive route, kind of work his way up to DC and ultimately head coach, but stay on that side of the ball because that's where his expertise lies. McNair, I didn't expect you to say that. McNair would be fine, but there's the minor detail that he sued USC. So, the
NCAA, he sued the NCAA.
Yeah. Especially with everything going on with SC's always got to be so mindful of the NCAA and in terms of perception, especially with the whole thing with Reggie and trying to get his Heisman back, get his jersey in the Collie again. But because there's litigation with the NCAA, I think the last thing USC wants is to have Todd McNair be on this staff as someone who's had a history of litigating with internally with the program as well as with the NCAA. So I would steer clear of that one like the plague, Fred. But I think that one, I understand kind of just the person, but I think with the person comes the theater, and I'd pass on the theater.
Yeah, so I have another one in mind too. And his last name rhymes with Push. But he has to clear all the other stuff up.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
He's not even working right now. Like he's not in media or whatever.
That's the one.
I shouldn't say he's not working, but like
look, the Achilles heel, Fred, of this program right now is that it's been 18 years since Reggie Bush was a USC Trojan. We haven't quite been the same since that Texas USC game. Let's just be very honest about it.
That's not true.
The 20 years prior to Matt and Reggie, it was kind of mediocre football up and down and whatnot. In the last 45 years, the stretch that has made USC, I think it pains me that stretch, the primary icons of that stretch don't feel welcome in the program. Whether that's Pete or whether that's Reggie, there's just this distance. And that's why I say the window's closing, because without those icons, who can you go talk to say USC was USC? Like, who knows that then? I love John David Moody. Is he going to sort of be this charismatic guy in front of a whole lot? Probably not. I love Mark Sanchez, but does he have the gravitas of Pete and Reggie? No. So that's the right answer, the real answer. There is really no option B. It should be Reggie Bush, but that's a dream right now. But I hope that becomes a reality at some point.
Who is your one that you're going to say, Ryan?
Yeah, so I thought about this a few days ago. I meant to text you guys and I forgot. But he currently coaches at Dorsey High School,
Stephon
in LA. Stephon Johnson.
We work out kids together every Sunday.
Yeah,
it's like four. It's like four of us out there. It's Trayvon Patterson, who played at SC. It's Stephon. It's me, and it's two other dudes. But like, it's legit. Like, we're out there working out kids like free of charge every Sunday at Poly.
He's already coaching. Bump him up from high school to college.
SC alum. That's exactly the right archetype.
Yep.
There you go. So I'm assuming we'll hear in the next 2 weeks. So we'll see.
Guys, it's been fun as always. Great conversation. I love doing this with you guys. It's so fun. Let's do it again on Thursday. How does that sound?
Sure.
For you?
Hey, we're back on schedule now.
I can get my thumbs up thing to do that.
We're
do it.
what does it say? We're back to our previous scheduled programming. So
there you go. There you go.
We appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys always. Appreciate you guys for listening. Appreciate you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next time. You guys know how it goes. This has been the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast. I've been messing that up all day today. Live free, fight on.